Today is November the 21st. I hope you're having a great day, and as you're just spending time following the ways of Jesus. Adam, I've said this almost every week, but it's just so true. I really like what we've done this year. Not to be arrogant.
Well, way to go, Keenan.
Pat myself on the back. But I mean, like, I just think for my soul, for just in what God is doing, it has been so good to spend a year with Jesus. Because as someone who struggles with ADHD and likes to jump around and stuff, I'm not saying you shouldn't read the whole Bible, but it's been good for me to come back at least once a week to Jesus and maybe say, okay, how did Jesus handle things? How did Jesus live? How did Jesus do this? Because he's the one I'm following.
Yeah.
And not because I don't want to learn from the Old Testament, not because I don't want to learn from other passages, but just again, if Jesus really is my model for things, coming back, starting with him every single week, it's been so good for me. And I hope it's been good for you too.
Yeah. It's been a fun journey for me to be focused on one direction all year long, and I think that hopefully for you the videos online have been helpful. I've enjoyed this right here when we sit and talk these questions. I've really looked at that, and so because of that, we're actually looking at new things for next year.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? How do we continue this kind of a moment talking about things and go forward? And I am getting excited about next year. We're going to do that as well. I think it's going to be just as good, maybe even better than what this year's been.
Can I go ahead and give him a sneak peek of one of the things, because we're going to need their help on it?
Yes. Give us a sneak peek.
I hope you're going to say yes, because if you say no, then it's not.
Whatever you say, we're locked into, so go for it.
No.
Right?
Adam and I have recently, because we're going through this together, and a lot of you are new to Jesus. You're new to the church. You're new to God's Word. You're new to what God is doing, and you've had lots of great questions this year. You've been emailing us about them. We've actually decided that we would love to do that once a week, where we just answer questions, because I think more of you, and instead of just emailing one person back, I think more of you have the same questions, so we'd love to answer those. So I wanted to start collecting those. If you have questions about Jesus, about the Bible, about God, about spiritual things, about what does God say about our culture, what does God say about politics, what does God say about marriage and life and sexuality, any of those things, any question you have, send them our way. I'm not going to promise you that we can answer all those next year, but we're going to try to release a video a week just answering questions you all have about those things.
Yeah, kind of like we've done, not this year because we were in the journey with Jesus this year, but the last couple of years before this, we've done the hot topics and the on-demand things, and it's really like that. It's just a way to answer questions, so we would love to hear those. We're beginning to compile them right now to prepare ourselves so that in January we start the year once a week with a conversation about those.
So if you're watching on Facebook, you can Facebook message us, or you can email us at Keenan, Kenan, at goconnect.church. If you're watching on YouTube, same thing. Message us, email us. We would love the opportunity to take those questions and to do our best to just respond how Jesus would to those things. Speaking of which, let's ask these questions we have right here and answering them together. The first one is this. Adam, what advice would you give to a kid mistreated at school? And do you follow that advice when you're mistreated? Just sometimes we read these questions ahead of time. Sometimes we read them and then we answer them. I happened to glance at them before we hit record. And so I just wanted to say, Adam, I remember you guys have, I think, opened up your home to 30, if I remember right, 30-ish kids, high schoolers, younger kids, whether it's foster care, whether it was having international students in your home. And I know that a lot of your kids have been mistreated because of those backgrounds and stuff. So you've probably dealt with this a lot more than I have. I was just curious, how would you respond to this?
To be fair, I've had Grace and I have had kids in our home from multiple nations. Religious, had a Muslim child once for a school year, and a teenager, foster children, all that. Some of our kids have been mistreated in school for things. Some of our kids, to be fair, have been the mistreaters of others, and it goes both ways because you get everything all in one big package deal oftentimes. But as we go through this, what I've told kids over and over is that all they can do is control themselves. I mean, that's it. Some of our kiddos come in and they, they've been told by somebody somewhere, if you're mistreated, punch him in the teeth, And I'm like, well, that's not really what Jesus says to do. He actually just turn the other cheek and do things differently. And then we misinterpret that as, do we just give up and get taken advantage of? Well, that's not really true either. There are ways to firmly stand our ground and do it with love and grace and tact also. And ultimately, I tell our kids, no matter what it is, whether it's a bullying thing or it's a mocking thing or whatever it feels like, they can control themselves. And I remind them all the time that they are not who other people tell them they are. They are who Jesus says they are.
Yes.
That's really hard to hear when you're a kid in the middle of a mess. But I remind them, you are who Jesus says you are. And he says you are his masterpiece. And he loves you. And he cherishes you. And he pursues you. And he wants to give you life and be with you for all eternity. And I remind them to stay the course like Jesus. Controlling themselves. It's in those moments that self-control is most tested and most valuable. And so we talk about self-control a lot.
Well, follow-up question to that. Do you follow that advice when you were mistreated?
No. I actually, yes and no. I really, I'm more now than I did 20 years ago, for sure. I actually, this past weekend, I believe, I said it at least a couple of our gatherings, maybe all of them. I don't know that I tend to be quick-witted and sharp-tongued and fluent in sarcasm. And when I feel in my life, historically, when I have felt as though I were mistreated or I were being attacked or I were being looked down upon or whatever it was, my response is oftentimes to verbally lash out at somebody. And I can do that in a way that is funny and is also sinful. And I have worked over the most of my adult life to walk away from that toward a place of living the way Jesus calls us to live, controlling myself without having to inflict damage upon them.
I would give the same advice to kids, and I think because I've learned from you and other people the same thing. Like, I can only control me. I can't control anyone else is doing. So what does Jesus ask me to do? And respond like that. Do I do that all the time? No. But I'm hoping the older I get, the more I am. I think I am. But I think I'm hoping that more people in my life would say that too. That no, the older you get, the more you look like Jesus. The next question we have together is, share about a time when you were mistreated. How did you handle it?
Actually, when you came through these earlier with me, you said the first thing that came to my mind was a moment that happened about, I moved to Carl Junction here about 10 years ago. It happened about 12 years ago, 11. We were in Ohio. As I'm saying this, my wife, as she watches this, she's going to laugh, probably because we live this, we remember this quite often. We had a neighbor that we had helped. We had been very gracious and generous toward her, and in a caring way. She had a bunch of daughters, and it was a interesting family situation. And then she had determined that the property lines were messed up in the neighborhood, and to be fair, they were. They were way back before we lived there. They got messed up in the little neighborhood. Everybody had moved their lines around and bought and sold little pieces of property and all this stuff, except for the people that owned my house and the one that she lived in. These two houses here. And so because of that, my house was not centered very well on the property like everybody else's was, and we had a little smaller piece of land. We didn't know that. We had a problem with the survey originally. All these little things had happened. And because of that, the property line in my house was only about 30 inches off the side of the house on the property, which meant that it ran right through the middle of the little deck we had, right down the middle of our driveway, almost hit our air conditioning unit that was over there, all these little things. And she declared it was her land. And I said, whoa. We found out about it. I offered to buy the land to actually move it around, and she accepted. Then she backed off it. Then all these little things happened. And one Sunday morning, I was at church preparing things. We were in the middle of rehearsals of things, and I got a phone call from my wife that a police officer was at my house because she had called the police because my car was in what I thought was my driveway, which was on her property, and this was a big mess. And I was not pleased, Keenan. I was very angry, and I didn't handle it well. I didn't go make a scene, but I told everybody, and I made fun of her, and I mocked her, and there were little things here and there, and then it dawned on me once, as somebody in my life that was much more spiritual maybe than me at the time, pointed out the fact that I was just sinning with everybody that I was talking to, and I had to repent of that whole thing and back off it, and mentally we've forgiven and moved on now, but that was hard. That was a hard thing, and I didn't react well to it at all.
I can't think of a time, not because I haven't been mistreated, but one, I don't have situations like yours that come to my mind, so I can't jump to that. But two, I think, like, because of Sunday, because we talked about how Jesus was mistreated, I struggle to feel like anything I feel like I've ever been mistreated in even compares. So I'm not saying I haven't been mistreated, but I just don't have one that comes to my head at this moment. So if we ever talk and I come up with one, I'll tell you in the future. But I do know this about myself, to know that no matter how I was mistreated, I don't normally handle it well. And I think this thing is true for you. When we're mistreated, I feel like there's an injustice that I have to fix.
Yes, because I think there's something in our brain that's wired in a way that sin twists and tempts it real easy. Because when we're mistreated in any way, there was a moment, I was in Pakistan for a summer, and I was in Pakistan. I told the story before, so I'll tell the brief version here. I took a ride in a taxi cab somewhere. The driver was trying to take more money than he should have from me, because clearly there was a language barrier and all this, and I didn't want it to happen. And long story short, he chased me kind of around the streets of Islamabad. I got in a cab. Police got involved. It wasn't my fault. Actually, the cab I got into was running drugs. It was a big deal. And I ended up standing at gunpoint on the side of a road and then walking about a mile home when it was all over and said and done. And I was mad. I was mad. Because when anything happens where we feel as though we're taken advantage of, or we feel as though we're mistreated, or we feel as though somebody got us in some way, we just kind of mentally rehearse the attack back at them. We do that. It happens. And when we do that, that is just the enemy, Satan. He's dancing around us, laughing and pointing and saying, there you go. And it makes us feel like we're winning when actually we're giving away the victory and we're losing because we're not handling it well. When we need to remember that Jesus' example, going to the cross, mistreated, stood there silently, in control, refusing to sin, refusing to argue, refusing to wallow around in the mess that was going on. He just stood there, looking the attack in the eye and staying above it all, in control of himself. And if we want to handle mistreatment well, we stay under self-control in the model of Jesus there. Yeah.
Third question, what are you trying to control right now that you need to yield to God? Probably everything.
Yeah,
life in general, like, because I don't like feeling like I'm not in control.
Yeah,
I think, I know that's generic, but it's just true. Like, I think I go through seasons where I recognize I've been holding on to something I didn't think I was holding on to. So it could be finances, it could be a relationship, like in my marriage or with my child, or even in the church. Like, I'm just holding on, trying to control things because I don't like feeling like things are out of control. And I don't think you do either. I don't think we're wired that. We like to feel like things are in control. But when we give control to God, we have to trust that He has control, even when I don't see it. Yeah. And I think we all struggle with that.
Yeah, you're right. All too often we try to dictate to God how He's going to fix the problem that we have.
So I think in this situation, I just need to yield complete control.
Yeah.
But what that looks like, and I hope it looks like for you this too, and I hope this is encouraging, is, again, I think sometimes we don't recognize we're doing this. When we thought we've done this. We've given up control, and we're holding on in one hand, we're giving up in the other hand, and maybe we're hiding this one, not realizing that we haven't done it. We all have things that we hold on to because we really are, as human beings, terrible at surrendering everything, which is why Jesus said, take up your cross daily. He recognized that in human beings, that we like to control some things, we like to hold back some things, and you and I, as Jesus followers, have to wake up every day and say, God, what am I holding on to that I don't remember that I'm holding on to? And release control of that. And for that day, you maybe do really well, and the next day you wake up and there's another thing. It's a lifelong thing that we all struggle with, but we all have to learn to start with Jesus and to start with giving Him control. So the last question, are there actions you need to take in this crisis that you're procrastinating on? Adam, we were talking a little bit before we started. I think really there's one answer to this. So why don't you kind of explain what we talked about?
I think we release the control, we surrender, but then we walk with somebody. So often when life gets hard, we struggle. The number one thing that we try to do is to run away by ourselves, and we try to hide. Like an animal that's been injured, we try to run away and hide and curl up in our little burrow, and we put our head down. We just stay there, hoping and assuming we'll get better, or we'll die. And we stay there just by ourselves. But what happens is whatever sent us there just festers, and it gets worse. The only way we ever overcome these things, the only way we ever overcome the mistreatment of things, the only way we ever see Jesus restore things is if we surrender it and let it come into the light and then walk with somebody else.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like you're in a crisis right now and you feel like you need help or you need somebody to stand with you right now, don't run away by yourself. Instead, reach out to one of us or reach out to somebody else that's a part of our church or your community of believers. If you're in a Bible study somewhere else, reach out to them and say, hey, let's walk together. It's so difficult to look someone in the eye and say, I just can't handle this. It's embarrassing. It can feel like we couldn't hack it. We failed a little bit, but in the surrender of that moment, we gain a strength that helps us walk through it better. So walk with somebody else, and let's do this together.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say other than I would love to see you join us this weekend as we continue just following after Jesus. Adam, you're going to be talking about how do we endure pain. I'm assuming because of the topic, we're talking about the cross.
Yeah, Jesus on the cross. And it's Jesus in Matthew 27. We're going to see this happen. And we're going to just walk with Jesus through this emotional event, this hard time. And I believe as we do so, like I hope we've been doing every single weekend, we're going to walk away with some lessons, some truths, some next steps possibly that you and I can take so we can walk through painful things. It's been said so many times, and I don't want to belabor this, but the holidays, Thanksgiving leading to Christmas time, the holidays can be some of the most difficult times of the year. In the time of the year where there's going to be Christmas lights around, there's going to be parties and turkey and football and people and gatherings. Those are the times that can be the most lonely, depressing, dark, and sad, hard moments of the year. We remember things that hurt. We feel like no one wants us there. We sit at home knowing everybody else is at a fun party. Our party ended early. Theirs is going on. Whatever it feels like. Those are all lies from the enemy trying to pull you away. And this is the pain that we go through. And so in this season, let's just listen closely to Jesus as we learn and grab a hold of tangible ways that we can walk through painful moments with the strength that comes with this kingdom.
Yeah.
That's what's going on this weekend.
Because of that, you can join us this weekend on Saturdays at North Heights at 6 o'clock. You can join us at Carl Junction on Sunday mornings at 8, 9:30, or 11. 9:30 is also live streamed, so you can join us live. There's always someone moderating that, talking live with you, so you can be there to just talk about life and share questions and ideas with each other. Or you can watch us on demand later. Make sure you prioritize this holiday season starting with Jesus and all the things you think about, all the things that you talk about, and all the things that you do. I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to be sent from this place. Lord in heaven, we love you. Help us to remember in the midst of the trials, in the midst of crises, that you're in control. Even in moments where we feel like we have control, we really only have them when we surrender to you. Our control is never in our hands. Our control only happens when it's in your hands. So help us to do that. Help us to let go and to let God have everything. Help us to sound more like Jesus, to live more like Jesus, to just help people see Jesus in all the things that we do. Because he is the hope for our families, for our neighbors, our co-workers, and the world. So help us live on that mission every day. Amen. Church, until we see each other again, you are sent. Have a great day.